Hi guys, Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. Here's a bit of a long-term experiment which we'll keep track of. I've got this area alongside my fence in my backyard. It's actually a raised section, and since I don't actually live here anymore behind the shop, it gets a bit out of control. So I'm going to do a test with shredded paper, as you can see there, and coffee grounds, and basically cover up the old grass and just maintain it neatly so I don't have wild growth every spring and have to spray, because I don't like using chemicals. So I'm going to use the shredded paper which I get from the real estate company, the coffee grounds which I get from the bakery, some old sheets that I no longer need, and I've got plenty of rags in the shed. They're cotton ones, so they're on top of the coffee grounds, and then some old carpet layer, underlay on top of the sheets, and the rest of the garden bed is actually pumpkins and some strawberries further up. So this will serve a couple of purposes. It will keep all this stuff out of landfill, because most of it was destined to go in the bin. In fact, it pretty well all was. It will inhibit weed growth along this section I don't have time to look after. And long term, it should improve the soil, because with the paper and the coffee grounds and the cotton sheets, and I've got a bit of old hessian under there as well, and the carpet underlay, which is a sort of a fibrous type natural material. You've just got to make sure there's no synthetics. But all this waste that otherwise would have just been taken to the tip is now going to serve purposes of keeping my weeds down and hopefully improving the soil. So I'll spread it out. I'll continue with the underlay and the sheets over the top of this section, and a few more coffee grounds at the end, and we'll give it a good watering. And all I'm going to need to do is keep it damp, because I'm watering my pumpkins and strawberries every few days. I'll just spray along here, and we'll check it in a few months and just see what it's doing. Just before I go, I'll give you a look from the other end. Now that I've laid out all the carpet underlay, watered it down, it looks quite neat, certainly much neater than weeds. I also forgot to mention that we could have used cardboard. I could have a layer of cardboard under here. So numerous layers of waste materials that will rot down nicely, and if I keep it damp, it should attract the worms, and it should end up gradually decomposing into the soil, improving the soil and getting rid of waste materials rather than clogging up our landfills. So we'll check it in a few months and just see if we've got any worm activity and if it has been rotting down, and also if there's any weeds growing through it. Okay, we're 2 months into this experiment, and as you can see, the weeds have started to poke through. So this part of the experiment perhaps is not super successful in that it probably inhibits the weed growth, but certainly if it's left unattended, it's going to be overgrown again. So I think we might add some cardboard, a good layer of thick cardboard mulch over the top, which should suppress the weeds even more, and we'll have a look underneath and just see what's happening to the soil. Okay, let's have a scratch around in this spot and see what's going on underneath. Okay, so there's an old sheet still there, but there's lots of weeds trying to get through. We had a good rain yesterday, so it's quite damp here. So look, they're certainly being suppressed, these weeds, but they are finding their way through, and the coffee grounds are pretty sludgy. Doesn't appear to be any worms or anything happening in there at this stage, but that's a more longer term thing. So we have succeeded in a fashion in that it's kept the weeds down a bit, but I think a layer of cardboard on top and then perhaps some more coffee grounds to weigh that down could help the situation. So as I said, we're 2 months in. We'll have another peek in another spot just to see if there is any worms. Okay, so this spot does show some worm activity. They've come up and got into the coffee grounds. So longer term, I think this experiment's going to work very well. We just need another layer to perhaps stop the weeds overtaking things.
Alright, I've just laid out some cardboard that I had, which was earmarked to be cut up for the recycle bin, but this is a better use for it, and hopefully it gives a more impenetrable barrier for the weeds to keep this side garden bed neater. I'm going to spread some coffee grounds over the top of this again, so we're getting quite a lot of layers here, but hopefully that will actually be a long-term benefit for the garden. And as I said, one of the aims of this experiment was to reduce a lot of this stuff going to landfill. I didn't mention cardboard initially, but this is an amendment to the plan, but it does actually solve a problem of excess cardboard ending up in landfill, although it does go in the recycle bin here, and it does get recycled, I believe, although Australia's recycling system at the moment is pretty dodgy, and who knows if it really gets to be recycled or ended up being dumped in landfill anyway. So this experiment will continue. I'll spread some coffee grounds over the top of this, and that will keep the cardboard weighed down. As it all gets wet, it should all gradually be consumed either by the worms or just bacteria and gradually rot down, improving the soil. So we'll leave this for quite a few months now, and we'll check it probably in spring sometime and just see how it's going. Okay guys, back to this garden bed experiment. It's been 5 months since you last saw the cardboard spread out here. The pumpkins have been well and truly harvested. Strawberries are coming back in and yielding quite well actually. We love our strawberries. Anyway, this isn't about strawberries, this is about a garden mulching experiment, and I top dressed that cardboard layer with a thick layer of coffee grounds. I used quite a lot of them over a couple of week period about 5 months ago, and they've really done the job of suppressing the weeds. At least the cardboard probably put up a good barrier. I did pull a few clumps out along the fence at one stage, and there were some growing up through the holes in the bricks, but I honestly have not weeded this garden area. And before we walk along to the other end, I noticed this end, which gets a bit more moisture here because of the strawberries. I've noticed birds hanging around, and if I look at it here, it looks like it's been sort of scratched around, and the birds have obviously found something tasty here, and I wanted to have a dig. And what we're finding just on the surface is bits of cardboard. So the cardboard's broken down underneath, and I'm presuming the birds may have found worms. So let's have a dig. Alright, there's a layer of cardboard. The coffee grounds are still under there, they're very moist. And yep, there's worms. So the birds have got a bit of a smorgasbord happening. They meet here for breakfast, and they have a scratch around, and they're pulling the worms out as the worms come up underneath. So that's excellent. And as you saw from that little digging spot, our mulched layers of cardboard, the cardboard's pretty well disintegrated, and the worms are coming up through the coffee grounds and gradually adding their castings and turning it into beautiful garden soil. So it's going to take a long time, because I did put a big layer of coffee grounds here. That looks like a bit of plastic strapping off one of the cardboard boxes. I'll pull that out later. So let's have a walk down further. As I said, that end gets a bit more moisture because of the strawberries. Now there's worms here. They're not far under the surface here, so that's what the birds are doing. They're not silly. They come here for a free feed. We'll go a bit further along, but I'm really happy with the weed suppression from this experiment. Now here the worms have pulled up all these bits of cardboard. There's even bits of the cotton sheet starting to appear. So obviously that's breaking down underneath. Now it's a bit drier here. Oh, there's lots of worms though, lots of little ones. Well, there you go. See if I can find a bunch of them for you. So there's some of the cotton sheet. There's worms in amongst that.
So I'm really happy with that. Everything we've put in is breaking down nicely. I'll go a bit further down where it's probably a bit drier. So yeah, some weeds have come up through under the fence, but there's really none come up through the cardboard and the coffee grounds. Have a dig down here. It's certainly drier here. And I haven't watered this, and we've had a fairly dry spring. But there you go, the cardboard's held the moisture in. Hasn't broken down as much here. Oh, there's the cotton sheet. So we get through that. More coffee grounds underneath. And there's a few worms in there. Yep, look, little baby ones. We've got springtails as well. So all nature's little composters are getting in there and breaking down all that waste. So you can see, because I haven't watered it, it's dried out on top. But the coffee grounds is giving it a good, sort of a protective skin. And once you get down below, cardboard appears to be pretty well non-existent. But there's good moisture down there, so the worms are coming up from underneath. So as I said, there was only some weeds come up through the bricks and along the fence. But really, for the last 4 or 5 months through spring, this I haven't had to spray. I haven't had to use any manual methods to clean it. It's pretty well been low maintenance and adding to the organic composition of the soil. And just for a comparison, this is where I stopped the test, and this is what happens without the mulching. So the weeds here are nearly as tall as I am. They continue down along there. It's very thick with overgrown, almost a fire hazard. So that's what happens without the mulching. And with the mulching, stacks better. And as I said, all that material is gradually being converted into soil. So I'm really happy with this experiment. I got rid of a lot of waste, all that cardboard, the sheets, the oh look, there was probably a few wheelbarrows full of coffee grounds over a few weeks, a lot of shredded paper, and all of that was actually earmarked from various local businesses to go into landfill, or our dodgy recycling scheme, and it's going to be great. So I'll just spend 5 minutes, pull out these few little weeds, and then this will dry out quite a lot over summer. I'm not going to worry about it. It can just, the worms will work their way up from underneath, the birds will continue to have their breakfast smorgasbord, and everything is good in the world. See you in the next video.